Hello everyone, this is Leah Whitehorse from Lua Astrology with the forecast for February 2023. So we begin the month with all planets in direct motion. So that's all planets in our solar system, the main planets. We do still have Pallas in retrograde motion and Sedna in retrograde motion. But generally speaking, we are in this feeling now of forward momentum. Let's go, especially with Jupiter in Aries now as well. We've got a lot of emphasis on the eastern side of the chart at the moment. I'm just highlighting it here so you can see that's the side where the ascendant is. And so when we have a lot of emphasis on this part of the chart, it is very much about our own personal experience. It's very focused on the self. And also there is some emphasis on how that self fits in with society as a whole, especially as the sun is now in the sign of Aquarius, the sign that's associated with society. Now, February 1st in the pagan calendar is Imbolc. It's the festival of new beginnings. It's when we first see the snowdrops, although here in Manchester in the UK, we've already got some snowdrops coming up and some daffodils. We're starting to see these new beginnings, the promise that spring will come, that life will return after the darkness of winter. Now, this festival is traditionally celebrated on the 1st of February, but astrologically speaking, it is when the sun hits 15 degrees of Aquarius. So 15 degrees of Aquarius, I am talking northern hemisphere, by the way. So 15 degrees of Aquarius in the northern hemisphere, that is astrological Imbolc. It is halfway now between the winter solstice and the spring equinox, exactly halfway. So these festivals mark these halfway points between the solstices and the equinoxes. If you want to know more about Imbolc, I do have an altar tour from, I think it was 2021, over on my Patreon, so I'll leave the link below. On the 5th of February, we have the full moon in Leo. It's a very dynamic picture because the moon in vibrant, passionate, bright, creative Leo is opposing the sun in more detached, group-minded, technologically minded Aquarius. And both of them are squaring Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius, over there in Taurus. And Uranus is on 15 degrees of Taurus, which is the Beltane degree. So that degree is halfway between the spring equinox and the summer solstice. So it's a very vibrant, magical degree. And therefore we have a lot of this tension pointed towards issues connected to the changes around our resources, the unpredictability around material matters right now. And with the full moon in Leo, there is a very strong feeling of wanting to be seen, to be acknowledged, to have attention, to be playful, to get into our inner child and just, have fun. This is a sign that's associated with light and life and children. But we do have this anxiety about the future. How are we going to pay for this? How are we going to support our children in the future? What's going to be left for our children in the future? So there's some of these kinds of questions coming into this lunation. The moon is supported though by a trine to Chiron over there in Aries. So there is a lot of emphasis on the idea that we can fix this. We can find a way. We can bring things together. We can heal. It's almost like we must heal. We must heal for the sake of our children, for the sake of our joy, for the sake of being able to live a good life, for the sake of being able to love and laugh. So if we are feeling anxious around this time, the most proactive way to deal with that anxiety is to go to Chiron and say, What can I do to fix this? What can I do to heal this? What personal action can I take to alleviate some of this anxiety and to bring things together? Now, February the 11th is an important date. Make a mental note. We have Mercury going into Aquarius. This is important because for the last 6 weeks, and it feels like forever, Mercury has been in Capricorn. We had that retrograde in Capricorn. So this has been a period of time where we've been doing a lot of really serious thinking. Maybe it's felt quite heavy because Capricorn is associated with limitations and responsibilities and work and all that kind of stuff, adulting, getting on with doing the things that maybe we don't want to do sometimes. There's been a lot of thought around all of that. But now Mercury moves into Aquarius, which is an air sign. So immediately there is a sense of fresh air, like blowing away the cobwebs in the mind. And it also allows us to think outside of the box. Mercury in Capricorn was much more about following traditional thinking and structures. But when Mercury goes into Aquarius, it blows open the mind, and we might find ourselves much more fascinated by progressive ideas or just different ideas, things that are not usually the things that we think about. Maybe we're talking to different people or just having different topics of conversation coming up that is making us think in new ways. That is the idea when Mercury goes into Aquarius. It is about embracing alternative perspectives because there's always something more to learn. The same date, 11th of February, Mars is going to move into a sextile with Chiron. So before I was saying about the full moon and talking about being proactive as far as our healing is concerned, now we have the message repeated. Mars, of course, is still there in Gemini, where he has been for a long period of time because of the retrograde. And now we're being encouraged to use the mind as a tool and remember that what we're thinking can affect how we proceed, how we go after our goals, the actions that we take. If we think that we can't do something, then we're going to hold back. If we think we can do something, then we're going to pursue it. Then we're going to take action. We're going to be brave. Now, with Chiron here, again, Chiron, the wounded healer. Chiron is also a mentor as well. So maybe, especially as Mars is going through the sign of Gemini associated with teaching, this would be an excellent time to connect with teachers, whether that is literal in your local night school or university or some kind of course, or whether it is more people that you find interesting, that helps you to make mental connections, that help you to understand yourself better. Mars sextile Chiron can really help us build our strength because we're strengthening those mental muscles. Now, the big story for February the 11th is that this is the date that Pluto is going to land on that 29th degree of Capricorn, the final degree, the anaretic degree, the critical degree. So everything about that sign is now accentuated. It is really given some intensity by Pluto. That's what Pluto brings. So in other words, there is intense concern around structures, infrastructure, rules, authorities, governments. It's very interesting that over here in the UK, our infrastructure is incredibly brittle right now. It feels like it is crumbling. We've got the NHS, which is in a terrible, terrible state right now. It's got so bad that nurses and even ambulance drivers now are striking to try desperately to get the attention of the government to say things aren't working. Capricorn wants things to work. Capricorn is about having a stable system in place that is supportive. But right now it is not working. We're currently going through the winter of discontent here in the UK as well, because of the price rises and because so many people are really struggling to earn a living, and the living that they are earning is not paying for the basics in life. And so a lot of people are on strike, not just the nurses and the ambulance. There's teachers, driving instructors, train drivers. There's so many people who are on strike right now, post office workers. So that is a very good example of a crumbling infrastructure. Pluto on the 29th degree of Capricorn. Now, the idea is to get rid of the old, to get rid of what isn't working, to then put a stronger system in place. But we will have to see, obviously, how that plays out as far as the powers that be are concerned. And obviously, different countries have different issues. But generally speaking, across the board, the collective story is this system's not working. It's now reached a critical peak. Pluto, 29 Capricorn. So we might start to see some manifestations of this across the planet. And we may just, on an individual level, just feel this more acutely. And on a personal level, it is about looking in our own lives. What structures aren't working? Where have I limited myself? Look to where Pluto is traveling in your own personal chart, because that area of life, that house, is going to become front and center with Pluto coming onto this 29th degree, because you're coming to the end of a journey. And so you're starting to see the finish line, and there's just a few more hurdles to go. There's a few more miles to go. There's a little bit more to learn. There's a bit more to put in place. And so this is why it's such an important period of time. And we're going to get 3 goes, because we're going to have Pluto on this anaretic degree up until March the 23rd. And that's when Pluto goes into Aquarius. And then it's going to station retrograde, go back into Capricorn on that 29th degree. So that's June the 11th to July the 27th. And then again, from the 20th of December through to January the 21st, 2024, Pluto will be on that 29th degree of Capricorn. That will be the finale before Pluto goes into Aquarius for the next 20 years. So just pay attention to what is happening around this time collectively, but also personally. Think about what else can I let go of or transform. Where do I need to feel more empowered here? Where have I disempowered myself or felt disempowered here? So there's a lot of rich work and rich potential that we can tap into when Pluto is on this final degree of Capricorn. If you want to know more about anaretic degrees, I have an article on my website. I will link it below. 15th of February, Venus will conjoin Neptune. And on the 16th of February, the Sun will conjoin Saturn. These smaller movements I don't usually address so much in my monthlies because they are smaller movements. But it caught my eye because of all the intensity with Pluto on the 29th degree of Capricorn. And then we've got these 2 conjunctions happening pretty much at the same time. So Venus conjunct Neptune is very beautiful and soft and gentle, spiritual. It's the love of spirituality. It's the love of peace, the love of the imagination. It's unconditional love. Love is limitless. Love crosses all dimensions. But then at the same time, we've got the Sun conjunct Saturn. And the Sun conjunct Saturn is very much about being a realist, being the Sun. I am. The Sun is our identity and Saturn is the realist. So being a realist. So it's almost like the universe is saying there are some beautiful things in this world. There's beautiful people. There's beautiful places. There's beautiful experiences. Life can be truly extraordinary. And at the same time, we need to be realistic. We need to step into our authority. We need to be authentic. We need to act with integrity. We need to know ourselves. Saturn is a planet that's associated with kind of self-management when it conjoins the sun. So we're managing ourselves effectively. And we can't get lost in the wistfulness of Venus conjunct Neptune. This is like, there are wishes. We all have wishes and hopes and dreams. But with the sun conjunct Saturn, it's saying we need to actively do something on a practical level in the real world to make these things happen. They're not just going to appear out of nowhere. It's funny now, I'm thinking that's almost exactly what I said to someone on my Facebook page the other day. They were talking about a vision board, and I was saying that I need to create a new vision board because I have a really bad habit of kind of putting things on my vision board and getting really excited about them, but then not actually doing the work to make them happen. And, you know, some things, yes, they can come out of the blue if we think about them hard enough, but you know, really that's the hard way, doing it the hard way to truly manifest something that we want in this world. It is about taking that vision and then taking action towards it and bringing ourselves into alignment with the energy of whatever it is that we want. That's a perfect expression of Venus conjunct Neptune, which is the energetic signature, and then the sun conjunct Saturn, which speaks of alignment. So align yourself to the thing that you dream of whilst we go through this critical moment, because then that will help you to identify what it is that needs to be released and where you can claim more power. The sun then enters Pisces on the 18th of February. So the sun going into Pisces. Happy birthday to all you Pisces people. This is the time of year where we start to kind of quieten down, because we're now in this 12th house. The global 12th house is a quiet place. It's a place that we can think of as a place of rest. We are resting here. We've travelled all the way around the chart since spring equinox last year. We have gone through every area of life. We've had all these different experiences. And now is a time to kind of move into a place of acceptance and peace. It's like finding our peace again. Finding peace with what is and what has been before we embark on the next mission, the next journey, the next bit of excitement when the sun goes into Aries. On the 20th of February, just a couple of days after the sun has entered Pisces, we will have the new moon in Pisces. So the new moon in Pisces is a time for us to tap into the vision of what we want for our lives. And it also connects us to what is meaningful. What do we really believe in? You know, this is the global house, which is associated with the gods and goddesses and the invisible worlds and our angels and spirit helpers. So when the moon and sun come together in this sign, firstly, it's very intuitive, and we're kind of dropped into this very spiritual, intuitive place where we're kind of feeling and sensing and trying to draw this vision out from our imagination or from our dreams. And with this new moon conjunct Saturn, it's an out of sign conjunction, but still it's there with Saturn at 28 Aquarius. It's almost like the message that I was saying earlier is repeated. It says, take the vision, Pisces, and bring it into being. Manifest it, Saturn, for the people, for the future, for society, for others, for your friends. Bring it alive. It's almost like it's not just for us. And it's really interesting, actually, as I say that, I'm thinking about something I saw 2 days ago. there is a song, or I would perhaps be better to say a performance by a young man from Brighton. And the song or performance is called Hi Ren. I'm going to link it below actually, because I just think everyone should see this. It is an absolutely extraordinary performance. I have never seen anything like it. I almost turned it off like 30 seconds in because it's not quite my style of music. But I am so glad that I watched it because this is powerful. It's incredibly moving. I would definitely say it's 9 minutes, and I would definitely say you need to have 9 minutes of quiet time just to watch. It needs your full attention. But it is so powerful because this young man is speaking from his soul. And that was the power of the performance, that you just feel it. It's not just about the brilliant words that he raps. It's about the way he's reaching everybody who watches this. You can't not be moved by it. It's that powerful. And this is what I was thinking about when I watched this performance and kind of dried my eyes because it made me cry. After watching it, I was thinking about how this is such a perfect example of when we allow ourselves to bring the vision alive, when we allow the muse to speak through us or just our soul to speak, how powerful that is and how that can change the world. It is life-changing because it's like a domino effect that one person after the next gets in touch with whatever is going on inside of them. And then that can become the fuel for their own creation. And I also think that when we see someone who is allowing themselves to be so raw and so vulnerable, that in a way gives us permission, Saturn, to also be raw and vulnerable and let others see us for who we are. So I've kind of digressed a bit, but I feel like it is a wonderful example of this new moon in Pisces that is conjunct Saturn. Again, the song is Hi Ren, and I'll put the link below. Now, talking of being brave, Venus enters Aries also on the 20th of February. So Venus going into Aries, we could talk about Braveheart. This is the impetus to go after what we love. Now, sometimes that can be problematic because Venus in Aries is a little uncomfortable. Technically, it's the sign of her detriment because Aries is a very self-motivated sign and self-interested sign, whereas Venus naturally wants to connect with others. So the two don't really gel together. So what can happen is that Venus sees something or someone that she is attracted to, gets all excited because that's Aries nature, goes running after it, but can get a bit bored. The thrill of the chase seems far more interesting than the actual capture of whatever it is that we want. So we can see how this might be a bit problematic when it comes to relationships. On a positive side though, Venus in Aries can be a lot more motivated as far as finding a relationship, can be braver about going after what she wants, I already said. And then also as well, this is a wonderful time for the practice of self-love, something that I speak about a lot and which I have found incredibly life-changing, to begin to love myself, to care for myself, to seek harmony within myself rather than looking outside for someone or something to give me that injection of peace and quiet and love and all the good feelings, all the good vibes. I realized, it took me a long time, but I realized that I could create these feelings within myself. The practice of self-love is very, very powerful. So Venus in Aries is ideal for this. On the 23rd of February, we have Saturn moving into a semi-square with Chiron. This is a smaller aspect, but I just wanted to mention it because it just shows there's a little bit of tension going on here between Saturn in Aquarius and Chiron in Aries. So Chiron in Aries focused on the self-healing, self-Aries healing Chiron. And we're also trying to kind of fix or heal issues with the sort of masculine expression with all this with Aries. And I was thinking the other day, all the stuff about Andrew Tate, for example, that really took me by surprise. I had no idea who he was even until I saw Greta sort of posting about him. And once I did know, then I just found it incredibly troubling that so many young boys are really looking up to this person. That was to me a real expression of what needs to be healed. And Saturn in this semi-square with Chiron I feel is reminding us that this personal healing that we are doing is for us as a society, for that stability we are looking for the future. But it's not always easy, and we do have to take others into account. We're not islands. I think that's what this is kind of saying. We're not islands. Yes, we are each on a personal journey, but that is within the framework of society. Even someone like myself who spends like 90% of time on her own, I am not disconnected. I'm still connected, whether it's literally through the internet or in other ways, of course, with people I love and so on. So we've got this connection to other people. And sometimes I think it's easy to forget that when we are within our own four walls, or perhaps we could say when we're in our heads. Aries rules the head. When we're in our head, it can seem like, there's nobody else, but we are all connected. So the semi-square is a little bit uncomfortable. It's not as forceful as a square. It's just saying, remember, there are other people around you. There's other people there who might be able to help, or you might be able to ask for support from. But also it's important to know how to support yourself and to heal yourself at the same time. So it's a little bit uncomfortable, but it's also worth the work. It's also about healing chronic conditions. Now, when I say that, I'm not talking about so much physical. I suffer from chronic issues myself, and I know that the point with chronic is that it doesn't necessarily get better, but we can manage it. We can manage those chronic conditions in the same way as we can manage the wounds, the emotional wounds, the emotional pain that we've been through in life that sometimes makes us feel as though we can't move forwards, we can't go after what we want, we can't be ourselves. So it's managing these things. We can't pretend the past didn't happen. If bad stuff happened, bad stuff happened. There can be trauma there, but we can learn to manage it so that it doesn't stop us from being who we are. The last thing to talk about for February is that Saturn on the 27th of February, right at the very end of the month, is going to land on 29 Aquarius. So now we have both Pluto and Saturn at the anaretic degrees. It means that they are in a semi-sextile with one another. So that's a neighbourly aspect. And just like neighbours, that can either work really well or not so well. It's going to depend. But I think these two can work well together because Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn and Saturn is the ruler of Aquarius as well. It's a co-ruler of Aquarius, the old ruler of Aquarius. So Saturn is in a prime position and is dispositing Pluto, so it just rules Capricorn where Pluto is. So I kind of feel like, Saturn's got a lot of say here. And Saturn is trying to help us to, I want to say, grow up as a society, It's trying to help us to grow as a society, to grow up, to take responsibility. The group needs to in some way take responsibility as we go through these structural changes, this massive transformation. But clearly, as I was saying before, with the final degree of a sign, that sign becomes very accentuated. There is like a screaming need for freedom with the final degree of Aquarius. Liberate me, set me free. And Saturn can feel, well, it can feel a bit like a jailer. It can feel like the one with the key. It's kind of interesting that we've got Chiron playing into all of this. Chiron is the key. The symbol is a key shape in the chart. So we've got a screaming desire to be free. The feeling of being hemmed in, held in by authorities or by rules or just, by limitations that are societal in some way, that are connected with politics. We're feeling that intensity of, I need to get out. I need to change things. Things need to be different. We need to start to progress. So there's a lot of that coming up around this time, and we've got the intensity then of Pluto as well. So it's just being aware this kind of energy is in play. And just as I was saying with Pluto coming to the end of its journey in Capricorn, it's a really good time to look at where Saturn is moving in your chart, because that part of life, there may have been some restrictions, some feelings of trial, that it's just been difficult here for the past 2.5 years. And yet Saturn for the past 2.5 years in Aquarius has been saying the more work that you do here, the better it will be for the future. We are doing this work here for the future. And so we might start to see the benefits of all the work that we've been doing in this area of our lives. We get some kind of payoff. We see that now we do have the foundation. And if we don't have the foundation that we were hoping for, then we'll get some kind of signal from Saturn to let us know there's still a bit of rocky ground here. Let's do this final piece of work before I go into Pisces. So Saturn is going to go into Pisces next month on March the 7th. So we just have these final few days, a week of Saturn on this 29th degree of Aquarius, whilst Pluto is on the 29th degree of Capricorn. Then we get to March and it is all change. So much going on in March, and that will be in next month's video, of course. This brings me to the end of this reading for February 2023. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, if you enjoy my content, do check out my Patreon where I do a weekly forecast like this video forecast. I also do lunation readings for the full and new moons. There's also a bi-monthly Q&A. There's plenty of other articles now. I've been on Patreon for about 3-4 years, so there's lots and lots of stuff to access from the past as well, depending on what tier you are on. And also, if you enjoyed this content, do click on the subscribe button, the like button, make a comment, share your stories about how maybe Saturn and Pluto have been working for you. It's always interesting to hear one another's stories because this is how we learn. Hopefully I will see you again next month. And in the meantime, I wish you many blessings on your path.